and welcome to the first episode of the Distance Learning Roundtable show on the Inkandescent Radio Network. I'm Hope Katz Gibbs, producer of the show and creator of Inkandescent Incorporated. Thrilled to be here to introduce you to the hosts of our newest program. Distance Learning Roundtable host Pat Cassella, who is the executive director of the U.S. Distance Learning Association, and Dean Hoke, who is the managing partner of the international organization Edu Alliance. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Hope. Thank you.
So as is our tradition on the Incandescent Radio Network, this first episode will be a Q&A with these hosts, and we're going to talk about its goals, its missions, and guests who will be coming on. So Pat, let's get started with you. First, tell us about USDLA, its mission, a bit about yourself, and how you came to be in charge of this amazing organization.
Sure thing. So USDLA has long been a trusted resource for everything that has to do with distance learning for a long time. We started way back in 1987 when it was really difficult to do distance learning or even set up technology to do a meeting. Our mission has always been to help the masses better understand distance learning, if you will, from the technology to the actual in-use practice for educators, students, equipment and service providers, et cetera.
Excellent. Dean, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Edu Alliance. We're a little bit older in terms of the consulting world. We started actually in Abu Dhabi back in 2014. And we are a higher education international consulting firm. So our target is primarily that we work with international universities throughout the world. We also work, though, with universities in the United States that do partnerships. And strangely enough, that also, maybe not so strangely, gets into the world of distance learning and distance education, which is a worldwide desire and need. And so we work anywhere from traditional market evaluation to distance learning needs to various other things. And it's a lot of fun, I must admit. Background a little bit has to do with higher education. It's where I started almost 50 years ago. And then I moved into broadcasting. And that was my first taste of truly distance education. Our station, which was in Louisville, Kentucky, was one of the stations that was providing distance courses. So in other words, they were doing what they called the old ITFS system. And this was providing classroom teaching to over 90,000 students in Jefferson County in Louisville. And as that evolved, it later became satellite television when I worked out in Texas and Alaska. And we were one of the biggest providers of satellite education to people in Texas and later in Alaska. So I've always had a taste for this area, and eventually had started a company called Connected Learning Network. When I did that, it was my first experience with USDLA back in, about 1999. And so I've had some involvement over the years. So passion has always been in the field of distance ed, e-learning, very much enjoyed it. It's been a fascinating experience. I'm very excited to be involved in this project.
Excellent. And that's a perfect segue to our next question, which is, tell us about your show and how you guys came up with this idea to create this wonderful roundtable.
Well, why don't I go ahead and begin? This idea began with another podcast series that I'd been working on that was primarily international in nature. And one of the things that came up was, as I mentioned, distance ed is the talk everywhere. Doesn't matter where it is, and it isn't as a new idea. It's how it's been evolving so much. And particularly since the pandemic, it moved from a nice idea to we better be doing this, and we better be doing this well. And as I was talking with people in presidents of universities and others, there was no question about it that there was a need for a series that would address distance education, leadership, and how it evolves in North America, who clearly are the leaders. to Europe, to Asia, to other places. And that's when I made a call to Pat, who I've known for quite some time, and said, Pat, got an idea. What do you think? Pat, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you from there.
Yeah, no, the timing was perfect. USDLA happened to be talking about doing our own podcast, and Dean reached out with the idea of his podcast program and, distance learning or learning without boundaries, right? We started chatting. Dean and I have known each other for a while now. And, with the concept, it quickly became apparent that we had really excellent synergy. And here we are, right? They say sometimes everything aligns. And in this case, it really did. It just, the timing was perfect.
Yeah, and like you said, Dean, it's so important since the pandemic. I joined the USDLA in 2017 because I had an idea about a homeschool K-12 company that we would do at a distance. And so USDLA was a natural fit for me to come and get involved with. And I learned so much, and I'm really excited to be able to open this up to K-12 homeschool, corporate, and just have everybody talk about the importance and power of distance learning. And thank God for Zoom and this platform, which has just changed our lives. And I met them at a conference that USDLA held way back then. So we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so I think this roundtable discussion is going to be amazing. Also an opportunity to promote Edu Alliance and USDLA, which brings me to my next question. USDLA is having a powerful event in November. Pat, tell us about National Distance Learning Week.
Yeah, absolutely. It started many, many years ago. And it's a week of free webinars that we provide back to the community. So while USDLA is a membership-based association, we also have hundreds of thousands of viewers that constantly go and check out our content. And one of the main events that we do every November, and this is the week of November 7th, is National Distance Learning Week. So every day we'll have at least 2 sessions. Sometimes we go as high as 5 sessions, but there's always a minimal of 2. And this year we're going to be focused on leadership in the online and distance learning world.
That's amazing. And the more we learn about distance learning, I think the more powerful we are as consumers and providers. So I love USDLA. It does such an amazing job. So we're going to end this podcast with one last question for each of you. Let's talk about the future of distance learning. We know where we were, then we experienced the pandemic, and where are we going? So Dean, why don't we throw it to you for the first response, and then Pat will finish up with you.
This really has been a lot of work internationally. And one of the things that I've noticed over the past 8 to 10 years is the growing interest in how to use distance education, whether it's blended learning, fully distance, and in places where internet really is barely there, and which has always been one of the barriers. And I think one of the second barriers has been a trust factor of what distance ed can do, testing issues, all the things that we used to fight over years ago in the United States.
Well, while it isn't, it's certainly not hard to establish a distance learning meeting these days with technology, but 35 years ago, it was really hard, right? And that's where USDLA was turned to. Folks were needing help with how do I set up a connection between 2 endpoints, and what's a bridge, and what's an MCU, and all this technology. It's very technology focused. And you asked Hope, where is it headed to? The technology is a lot easier today. Granted, people don't have it down to a science. That is where we're focusing our time more on the pedagogy of it, right? How should instructors leverage this great technology that we have? There's a lot of different teaching methodologies, right? I could be teaching remote and only a remote audience. Or I could be teaching a hybrid audience where I have, both students in front of me and students far away. And there's different things that you need to do when you're holding a class like that, right? There's different technologies, different methodologies.
And Pat, one of the things that I heard and see now, one of the most fascinating things, you talk about technology. One of the things that is, I still have a tough time getting my arms around it every once in a while. The tools that we use to learn, is just been completely flipped on its head. So not only the teaching methods, but for example, when I was in Nigeria, how they were handling the pandemic, they were doing them off their mobile phones. And that's how those conversations, and using WhatsApp, you know, and I'm just going, how is this possible? You know, but with good teaching and good stylism and learning how to, distance ed is a tool primarily. It's how those instructors, those trainers find best ways to use all these millions of tools. And that's the remarkable thing I think we see.
Well said, Dean. Well said.
Yes, tools, technology, content, the future, how kids are learning. So many things for y'all to talk about. I can't wait to hear more of the show, the Distance Learning Roundtable. We are thrilled to be producing it on the Inkandescent Radio Network. And you are listening to episode 1. Episode 2 will be coming at the start of November. I'm Hope Katz Gibbs, the founder of Inkandescent Inc., here today with USDLA Executive Director Pat Cassella and Edu Alliance Managing Partner Dean Hoke. They are going to bring you so much great information in the months to come. So thank you all for listening. We look forward to doing it very soon with episode number 2. So thank you, Pat. Thank you, Dean.
Thanks, Hope.
Thank you, Hope.
We'll see y'all.